Hi guys, it's Kate and welcome back to my channel. So I wasn't really sure what kind of video I was going to do this week because so far I've only read one book in January and it's not one which I'm planning to do a full video review on. So instead I think I'm going to do my January TBR for today's video, so just going through all the books which I want to read this month. My Goodreads goal for this year is to read 100 books, so I'm planning on starting off quite well by reading 10 books in January, which will give me a little bit of a head start on my goal, because I think to read 100 books I need to read something like 8.5 per month. So if I read 10 in January I'll be a little bit ahead, which means that if I have a worse reading month down the line then it won't matter as much. So I'm going to start by going through 4 books which were in my new to booktube tag video, which was the first video I did. These were books which I kind of put on the end of my December TBR because I wasn't sure whether I would have a little bit of extra time to read a couple more books at the end of December, and it turned out that I didn't, so they've kind of been carried over into my January TBR. And those books are The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis, Rip Van Winkle and Other Stories by Washington Irving, Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang, and About a Boy by Nick Hornby. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is the book that I've already read this month. This is the second book chronologically in the Chronicles of Narnia series. I'm currently rereading this series, so next month I'm going to move on to The Horse and His Boy. Rip Van Winkle and Other Stories is a collection of short stories, all of which are based on kind of folklore and legends from around the New England area of America. I'm finding this one quite interesting because I enjoy reading kind of legends and folklore, and it's definitely interesting to read quite new folklore because obviously this is based on the settler culture of America, so all the people who settled and colonized America around the 15 and 1600s, I think. So these are relatively new legends compared to some other ones, especially British. Stories of Your Life and Others is a collection of science fiction stories, one of which is the basis for the film Arrival, which I think has now been nominated for a Golden Globe, or Amy Adams has been nominated for a Golden Globe for her performance, I think. And these are science fiction stories which I think are a little bit more philosophical than some of the other sci-fi that I've read. And I'm excited to get to this one because I do want to read a bit more science fiction in 2017 because it is a genre that I really enjoy. And I haven't read too much of it in the past year, so I want to get on this. About a Boy is another book which has a pretty famous film based on it, which is About a Boy starring Hugh Grant and Nicholas Hoult. I think it was the first film that Nicholas Hoult did before he was in Skins and X-Men. This is a story about a man who is kind of spoilt, and then he meets this young boy, and their relationship kind of teaches him a little bit more about what he should appreciate about the world. I'm basing that summary on the film, which I have seen before, although I did watch it a while ago. I'm not sure how much is changed in the book, or how much is changed in the film rather, whether the book is similar or not. I have read a couple of other of Nick Hornby's works and I generally quite enjoy his writing, so I'm looking forward to this, but this is one of the ones that I own which I'm not sure is going to be sticking around on my shelves after I've read it. And so on to the books which I haven't mentioned before. First up is The Final Reckoning by Robin Jarvis. This is the third book in the Deptford Mice trilogy, so it's the final book in the series. I've had these books for ages. I got them when I was a lot younger after I met the author at Waterstones. In fact, it wasn't even a Waterstones, it was an Ottakers, which is a chain of bookstores that has been closed for about 10 years now. So it was definitely a long time ago that I picked up these books. And they sat on my shelves for ages not being read, and then my sister last year ended up reading them because she wanted a short series of books to read to complete her reading challenge for the year, because she was trying to read I think 50 books and she was falling a bit behind. These are not too big, especially the earlier books in the series are quite short, and because they're for children they've got quite big text, and they also have some pictures. If I can find one, there's one there, which are kind of creepy looking. It's all about a group of mice who find themselves terrorised both by rats and by the rats' sinister god called Jupiter, who is a very threatening figure. It's a pretty violent series. The past couple of months I read the first 2 books in the series and I was actually quite surprised by how I enjoyed them. They are really quick reads because they're meant for much younger readers, but they are an enjoyable series, especially because they're so kind of gruesome and scary. Especially the second book, which is called The Crystal Prison, I really enjoyed because it focused on one of my favourite characters. This month I also want to read another of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer tie-in novels. I am now, I think, on the 4th novel, or possibly the 5th. Yeah, the 5th novel in the tie-in series, which is the 3rd in this bind-up anthology. It's called Blooded, and it's by Christopher Gordon and Nancy Holder. I'm pretty looking forward to this book because of the tie-in novels that I've read so far. The best one, which I enjoyed the most, is called Halloween Rain, and that one was also written by these 2 authors. So hopefully this one will be good as well. I think they have a really good skill for getting the right voice for the series, which can be quite hard. I also want to read this month The Subtle Knife by Phillip Pullman. This is the 2nd book in the His Dark Materials trilogy. I read the 1st book, Northern Lights, last month because it's kind of a wintry read. I have not read this trilogy before. I had read Northern Lights once before and then I hadn't carried on with the series because I think I started this book and I just really wasn't getting into it. I wasn't enjoying it. So I'm giving it another go because I do want to read this series because it is a fairly well regarded series of children's literature, although I'm not sure if I'm going to hang on to the books once I finish them. But I definitely do want to try and read them and get through them and see why people enjoy this so much, because I did find the first book enjoyable, but I'm not sure if it's kind of up there for me with some of the other series of children's literature that I've read, possibly because I'm reading it as an adult. Next up is another book which is part of the series, and it's also another reread for me, and that book is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I've read this book once before, and I didn't then go on and read The Lord of the Rings, which is what I want to do after I finish it this time. I've had The Lord of the Rings for a while and I haven't picked them up properly because they are a bit daunting because they're so well regarded in terms of fantasy literature, and I have had people tell me that they are a bit of a slog to get through, especially because there's a lot of walking and not so much action in some of the books. But this year I do finally want to get around to reading them. The next book I want to read is Tourist Season by Carl Hiaasen. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I've read several of his books before and I've really enjoyed them. He is a writer who writes kind of quirky crime stories set in Florida, and his books are always really wacky and dark and entertaining. So I have one more book on my TBR, but I don't actually have a physical copy of it yet, and that is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. This is the first volume in her autobiography, and it is the book club pick for my friends and I's book club for this month. We run a book plug together in which we always pick a book of the month to read all together, and then we do a discussion post on it, and this is the book we picked for January. I'm quite excited to get to this one because one of my resolutions was to read a bit more diversely, and unfortunately a lot of the books that I have picked for January are not actually that diverse because lots of these are either series that I've already started reading and I want to finish or continue with, or they're books that I kind of want to read and get off my shelves. Okay, so those are all of the books which are on my TBR for January. If you've read any of them, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts down below, although please don't spoil me too much if I haven't read them yet. And I'd also be really interested to hear what you guys are looking forward to reading in January as well. There are links down below to the blog which I run with my friends if you want to check out some of the previous book club posts that we've done. I've also got some links to my social media and my Goodreads page. Please add me on Goodreads because I want more friends, because I love stalking other people's reading progress. I find it really encouraging and it's a great place to find new books that I might want to read. That's everything for this week, so I'll see you next time.